Your life's ambition is really simply making your livelihood something that you actually do love doing. But you need a practical way to go about it.
Civilization is in the following mode. This is what we need to break.
We are pulling away from all of this. We don't believe in a political class. We have a constitution that's called the prime law. There's no leaders, no political class. It's all mutual value exchange.
Find what you love.
Welcome to another episode of the Mark Hamilton NeoThink podcast. So we've been having some really profound talks lately about your lifelong quest. And I want to take this conversation more public. And that conversation is your lifelong vision to creating a new country where everyone lives the extraordinary lives they always wanted. So tell me about that.
Sure, and I'll back up for a second. We'll say new country, but it's really a new world because it's a world planet Earth has never witnessed. We've talked about this in our previous podcast about every civilization on Earth since the beginning of time has been a political civilization with a ruling class over the working class. And there has never been a civilization that has no ruling classes. I say in our previous podcast, I say that's a business civilization, but most people don't really understand or know what business actually is because it's been so decimated by politics and the ruling class and the political businessmen and the integration between politics and business. We've never really known the pure benevolence, the purity of a business civilization. So what I want to do is start a new world. And I was willing and happy to go there with changing America through, as we all have discussed, the 28th Amendment, the Prime Law Amendment. The Prime Law simply being the most fundamental natural law of protection. It's a natural law of protection, basically saying no one can initiate force. No group, no persons, no government, nothing and nobody can initiate force upon others.
Right. It just comes down to the simple principle that one person can do whatever he or she wants to do with himself, with his property, as long as it doesn't harm another individual's self or their property. That's the axiomatic law that everybody except a tyrant would agree with.
However, we've never lived under that law, ever. There's always been ruling classes with the power of initiatory force. That's the rule of man. And the rule of man has destroyed every civilization. Every civilization that has sunk to levels where totalitarianism takes over, whether it's fascism or communism or whatever, socialism, that is because of not having the prime law that banishes initiatory force within any group, within any government, within any society. And the only force that's allowed is obviously self-defense force. That's the only moral use of force. But that's never really, it's obvious, right? I mean, it's just so obvious. You talk to any soccer mom and she would say, well, of course. Yet she will go and vote for socialists. She will go and vote for people who are hurting her and her family and her children. Now, she's innocent, and I never blame people. I never blame the general population. And here's why. I'm going to just delve into that a second before we get back to my big vision. People do not realize that when they vote, for example, for whoever it might be, it could be in this day and age, it could be Joe Biden, or it could be Donald Trump. And yesteryear, it could be Bill Clinton, it could be Bush. What people are getting behind, let's call it, especially if they're adamant about who they vote for, what they're getting behind is not really what they think they're getting behind. They're fooled by illusions, and they are voting for those illusions Because that's the secret weapon of politicians and government. They come at you with illusions. So you believe they're doing something good for society, which they're not. And the reason you know they're not is because it's based upon initiatory force. I pass these regulations because it's going to do this and that. But what they're doing is they're forcing, using initiatory force against, let's say, energy companies from drilling or bringing us the energy that we need. They're using initiatory force. So it sounds good for whatever, the New Green Deal or whatever. It sounds, you can make it always sound good. Those are illusions. That the people with the gift of the gab are the ones who rise up in politics. They're the best at speaking. Look, if you want to vote for someone who's not such a great speaker, because a lot of times they're more real. That's something I say to people. Don't necessarily look who's the smoothest speaker, because a lot of times that's just the gift of the gab, and the gift of the gab means you can create illusions to trick more and more people to voting for you and for your policies that are going to hurt you and your children and future generations.
And could you explain initiatory force more?
Sure.
About actually what it is?
Yes, initiatory force is the actual initiation of force on others, and that can come from regulations, bureaucratic regulators, from executive orders, actually from bad legislation. These are policies that require force to, in other words, if you don't comply, you're in violation. And you can have civil repercussions, large fines, or you could have criminal repercussions and actually lose your freedom. So society can not only survive and exist, but it will excel when you remove all forms of initiatory force, which probably a better way to understand it is the rule of man. We're going to do this policy because I like it. My political group, my faction likes this policy, and that's why we're doing it. Whereas the other, say, political party says, no, that's the wrong policy. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be doing this instead. It's rule of man. It's because my party likes it, my faction likes it, so that's why we're doing it. And we're going to shove it down your throat, basically. You're going to have to do it because I did a stroke of the pen and say, the border's open. I did the stroke of a pen and say the EPA is going to shut down these or stop this, right? These are forms of initiatory force. And the way we can, in our own minds, understand it better is by saying, that's rule of man. That's rule of man. Now, what's not rule of man? Well, believe it or not, it's rule of law. And what's the law?
The prime law.
Prime law, baby. Once you have the prime law in a pure civilization, in a new civilization, this brings us back to how you open this discussion. In a new country, the prime law would be the constitution of that new country. And you really don't need anything more. Now, I've written a 650-page book when the approach was to fix America. And in order to fix America through an amendment and so on, getting the prime law in there as an amendment, that's very involved and it's going to be an evolution. You're not starting off in a business civilization. You're starting off in a political civilization. You have to work your way into a business civilization. So there's a lot involved. It's extremely complicated to the point where I don't know if it's doable anymore for America. I honestly don't know. And this is why I am moving now into the whole realm and concept and the big vision that you brought up of starting a new country. Now, my personal driving force behind and big vision behind a new country is this. I fully integrated with the fact that human consciousness is the greatest value in the universe. There's nothing greater. And therefore, it is the most important responsibility of mankind to prevent that incredible value from perishing. So my big goal, my big vision in life, is to cure aging and death. Now, I'm just going to say for a minute, that's just much too big right now of a vision for the masses. And there's a reason for that. It's because we do live in a political civilization with suppression. So we're suppressed down into cookie-cutter lives. We aren't living the life we, as conscious beings, were truly meant to live. We're not living that life. We're living below that. We are in these stagnant routine ruts for the most part. We're in these cookie-cutter lives. And that's because we live in a political civilization where you have a ruling class that is living with great wealth and reverence and prosperity off of our backs, suppressing the working class.
A lot of people in that realm benefit from keeping people down so that they can rule over them and have power. Absolutely. And that's just how the system works. And the only reason they're able to do that and benefit from suppressing the masses, suppressing people, is through force, is through initiatory force, where they can literally force people to do what they want them to do. And that's the big problem of all political systems and governments throughout human history, is what you were talking about, is that initiatory force where people at the top who gain that power can keep everyone suppressed down. And so by removing their only means of suppressing people, which is initiatory force, yes, by removing that, you get rid of the lid holding society down for society to then flourish.
Absolutely, Wallace. And you see, because of what you just described, people do not feel the desire to continue living forever because they're carrying the burden of life on their shoulders. The burden of life is caused by the suppressive ruling class above us. And every civilization that has existed on Earth existed in that paradigm, in a political civilization with a ruling class, suppressing the working class and the retired class, suppressing us. So we don't taste the true deliciousness of life. We just don't. We have a lot of bitter taste in our mouths. We have a lot of exhaustion in our bodies. We do not live with the energy and the excitement and the childlike glee that we should live with, that conscious beings are supposed to experience in life. I know this on a personal level. I understand all of that glee and joy and happiness and the absolute desire not to ever lose the greatest value in the universe, and that is your consciousness. But see, that's my big vision on starting a new country. However, that would draw very few people to my new country. The reason why is because all people are trapped in the political civilization. They're burdened. Yes. The lid of society. So they don't feel what I feel. They don't feel the desire to live forever. Now, in my talk a year ago to VIP Neo-Thinkers, my speech to those who gathered, I did point out that there are a group of people who really do desire to live forever. Can you guess who that group of people might possibly be?
A lot of these billionaires.
Right on. That's exactly right. They have their own like little secret society going. They've spent tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm talking about, the Larry Pages, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon is not necessarily part of it, although he's developing the brain link. What's it called? Neuralink, in order to do this. But several of these other, Larry Ellison, there's a whole group of them. Brian Johnson, Jeff Bezos. Yeah, they're spending enormous amounts of money, in the hundreds of millions, because they want to cure aging. So they don't see or understand any of my political dynamics, which basically is I'm the anti-politics. Get rid of politics altogether. Society can and will, not only can survive, but will flourish without a political society.
And that's where a lot of people, most people think it's like almost a dichotomy where you're on the left or you're on the right, or you're somewhere in the middle. Whereas this isn't even on that line. It's a third dimension. It's an alternate choice where you say no to politics and all the evils that it brings. And you don't have to be on the left. You don't have to be on the right. You don't have to be in the middle. You can just say no to politics and be in the new realm of government, or the new realm of politics for which you're offering people.
Right. Which is a business civilization, a mutual value exchange. That's how all society will work, and the benefits are going to be stunning. Before I forget, you just said something that sparked something in me. Can you just sort of review again what you were saying, because I need to say this point.
Most people think it's a dichotomy of what political affiliation you are. Yes. You're on the left, you're on the right. It's a line. Yes. Where you're somewhere on this line from the left to the right to somewhere in the middle. Yes. We offer a third option that nobody knows. It's not even in the same realm.
Right, and thank you. I've got my train of thought there. The world's become so absolutely confusing. You're listening to politics now, and you listen to one side, and you get the veins in the neck pumping, and the face turns red, and you go, yes! Then you listen to the other side. You go, wait, yes. And you're pulled and tugged in both directions. Then you finally take a stand. Well, this guy's a chump, so I'm going to go with him. Or this guy is, destroying our energy sources, so I'm going to go with the other guy. All these little things where you try, but it gets so confusing and chaotic. But you can just leave all of that behind, as you were just saying, and just step into the non-political realm. It's just like that.
And I think a lot of people relate to that, and especially a lot of people I talk to. They're tired of politics. They're sick of politics. Yes. But they've never been presented with another option that is no politics, that is anti-politics. And I think that will resonate, and that does relate with a lot of people. Absolutely. Because the world of politics is just, it's disgusting almost. It's like...
And more all of the time, and they never knew they had another alternative. They never knew, and they do. And this alternative has existed since the beginning of time, just that no one's seen it. That's all. It's that simple. I'm not a genius. I just can see it. It just happened. And I track my background to my father and his neotech philosophy, and then I evolved that into the neothink ideas and application systems. And moving forward, it's just a matter of being able to see it. That's all it is. Once you see it, it becomes so obvious. So obvious. However, people aren't going to see it right away. So here is the drawing card to the new country. It's not going to be, come here, don't die. Now, we may attract some of those billionaires. I know we already had a nibble or a bite. And I spoke about that in one of the movement meetings that we had with our NeoThink members. But then Google canceled me, so I can't run my campaign now on Google. So that unfortunately ended. But we're just going to move ahead with this and see what happens as we go along here. But the masses are not going to be drawn into this whole concept because we're going to cure aging and death as the main. And by the way, the reason that happens is once you start this new country based on the prime law, the overwhelming regulations that exist all throughout the world now, there's nowhere in the world where you can go without progress being impeded by regulations, by government regulations and legislation. There's nowhere you can go any longer. You can't go do clandestine research anywhere in the world. It's just no longer available. So everything moves slowly, and it's too slowly. And this was my drawing card to the billionaires. If they really want this in their lifetime, they have to go to a new country that's under the prime law, where government can't get in there and slow down progress, where the clip of progress can move at the speed that's necessary to achieve this goal of eradicating fatal diseases and eventually aging itself before these people die. That's the only way. There is absolutely no other way to do this. It's an axiom. So that's a powerful drawing card. I was shut down on Reaching the Billionaires by Google, ironically, as both the Google founders are part of this group that wants to live forever, talking about this whole, but I'm sure they had nothing to do with those decisions. It's just the nature of advertising and working with Google. So that is the drawing card to those people. But as I said, it's not the drawing card to everyone else. Here will be the drawing card to the masses. This is what will stimulate them and make them want to come to us. And that is, in a world that's a business world and not a political world, where progress is not held back, those people are going to live with such prosperity. They're going to live like millionaires in today's civilization with doing very little. And the reason for that is the geniuses of society then are free to soar ahead without being retarded and held down and pressed down by the ruling class, by all the regulatory bureaucracies, by all the legislation that all requires the rule of man, all requires initiatory force. That's all gone now. So they can soar. Will there be checks and balances? Absolutely. But it'll all be done on a much more effectively on a private level, where the good of mankind is the only reason those regulatory companies will be in business and thriving, because the people see that they are in it for the people. See, right now, the government, the bureaucrats, the politicians, they are not in it for the people. They're in it for themselves. But when you move into that other civilization with no more initiatory force, no more ruling class, any business is in it for the people, because that's how they survive. That's how they thrive. Now, if they're doing something to benefit themselves, what in this world I'll call the political businessmen that are like this with the government, they'll go out of business so fast. The ones that are going to thrive are doing one thing and one thing only, and that's doing good by the people.
Creating values, solving problems for people, not for themselves, they're not in bed with the government preventing competition.
Yes.
They're not lobbying to keep competitors away.
Yes.
And so they can get away with almost anything that they want to.
Absolutely. And that's happening, and people are getting sick of it because they're beginning to see what's going on, thank goodness. Now,
so I think we do have to clarify there's two types of businessmen out there.
yes.
There's the political businessman and the market businessman.
Yes.
The market businessman works for the people, solves problems for the people, creates and provides values for the people, versus the political businessmen.
Right, and the political businessmen, as you're pointing out there, are doing this for the government, are their relationship, and also to block out competition. They get rights of way, cozy deals, sweetheart deals that boost their business, gives them easy money, and it blocks out competition from the market businessmen. They can't rise up and compete. So That's a very important understanding.
Right. And that it's not a true, fair, competitive marketplace right now because competition is being blocked. So that's why, some of these big businesses that are in bed with the government are getting away with things that go against the people. It's because they're blocking out competition.
Just look at big tech and the revolving door they had with the government, and particularly through the whole COVID dynamic, where they controlled all the information. Now, back to the drawing card of the masses to the new country. Like I said, their prosperity would rise beyond anything ever seen, and they would live like millionaires. And they're going to have three great benefits. One is wealth. They're going to live like millionaires, even if they do very little, because the progress of society is going to be so great, price is going to be driven down to fractions as values rise toward infinity. Costs will drop towards zero, values will rise to infinity. That's the nature of a mutual value exchange, pure business civilization. So that's going to rise their buying power incredibly high. I'll give just a few examples here. Right now, economists have been predicting about this severe recession, and it's possible we're still going to go into that. But AI has been really boosting the economy. That's a business dynamic. The computer revolution and the information revolution, those drove up your buying power dramatically. For example, I've made the point you can put in your pocket what only Fortune 500 companies, as far as computer power, could not too long ago. Going back before high tech, 100 years ago, the production line just skyrocketed the standard of living throughout America and then the world. Go back even further, the division of labor in the Industrial Revolution skyrocketed standards of living around the world. Business, and the problem in all of those examples I gave you is it didn't take long for government to get their hooks in there and start regulating, using their rule of man. What's rule of man? Initiatory force. Oh, so subtly hidden up in illusions that sound really good, level this, level playing this and that. All of these illusions that the masses fall for. I have two very good friends. One was one of the largest donors to the Obama campaigns and the Clinton campaigns. Very well-known, famous individual. And another, and these are Hollywood people, by the way, another very famous actor, everyone knows him, who was a big Bush donor and loves, and is conservative right. You always see him on Fox and Newsmax. So opposite ends of the spectrum, of the political spectrum. And they both are good friends of mine. But they both know not to talk politics around me because they just know I'm the anti-politics. I don't try to talk to them because when I have personal relationships that are that touchy, let's call it, about their politics, I let it be. But what I do look for is the goodness in these people. And these are two very good people. And they don't realize the harm they're doing by the support that they provide to politics. The reason they don't know is because what I said earlier, they think they're doing good because they're supporting illusions. They believe what the illusions are. And they would be horrified if they realized they were harming themselves, their children, their grandchildren, by supporting those political factions.
But the thing is, those are the only options. So they have to choose.
They're very innocent.
But before this, there's never been a third option.
No.
And so yeah.
So no, and but the point I wanted to make there, these are two very famous, very powerful, very wealthy people out of Hollywood. Big shots, big wheels in Hollywood. But they are not part of what I call the ruling class. I know these people. They're very innocent at heart. They do, in their fields, they really work hard to bring value to their audience, to their craft, to their skill. And I really appreciate what they can and have done. So there are two families, I'll call it, in our existing civilization. I'll call it the ruling class. That's one class or family. And I'll call it the non-ruling class. And that's the other class or family. They're beautiful people in the non-ruling class. So I can love them and they can love me, and we can have a wonderful friendship, even though we know we will never see eye to eye politically. And I don't want to go through that exhaustion with them to try to straighten them out. However, I do assume at some point they're going to be watching my podcasts, and that could help them. They'll know I'm talking about them when they see this. But all people are like that, Wallace. Not just these two famous people. All people are like that, except for those in the ruling class. And when I say the ruling class, I'm not talking about everyone in government. There's a lot of innocent, very good bureaucrats. And there are some politicians who truly are trying to fight the system, so to speak. Trying to fight particularly the direction the country is moving in, which is very dangerous. We're moving into dangerous times. We're heading into totalitarianism, a police state, basically. And these are very dangerous times, both on the domestic level and on the international level. We're in dangerous times right now. So as you said, they only have the two choices. So obviously they're going to struggle to try to do what's best. And I've said this myself. I do look at the pH balance, like pH balance in a human being. And if it goes to basic or to acidic, it can kill the organism, it can kill the human being. So when I see things moving too far in one direction, just to try to keep the country as safe as possible, as long as possible, I'll go and vote for the other side to try to pull things back to the middle, just to keep the country safe as long as I can keep it. But that doesn't mean I am political at all. It's just I'm trying to keep the balance until we get to the point we can have our new country.
Right. And it seems like the point is, no matter how benevolent somebody is, whether they are in the ruling class or non-ruling class, the point is the system itself is bad. The system itself, it's all they've ever known. And so they try to do what they can if they're benevolent, but the system itself is bad. And in the long run, as we've seen for every government throughout human history, throughout the history of the world, of civilization, eventually it all comes to an end.
Yes, and you're right. It's a system. And imagine a system is like this big sphere. And you have to literally, in your mind anyway, step outside of that system. And people have never done that. That's why this is so challenging for people to do. But I've done that. And it's so easy once you see the other system. It's so easy. I do lay it out in The New World, in my publication, The New World. I do lay out the whole system. However, people aren't going to sit down and read a 650-page book. They're just too busy. I do have 2 million people who have read my books, and more than one of my books. So that's great. That's a great start. And that was all by invite only. It was a very secretive society, and it's been kept secret for, over 50 years. But now, as you said, as we open this, we want to move out to the public, and we're talking more now, and we're bringing it to the public. We're not challenging any political system. We're not challenging the Democrats, and we're not challenging the Republicans. What we're doing is saying there is something else besides this. It's a different system, as you said, Wallace. And we are bringing that to the world. And I am offering this new country And we will take it in steps, which we will talk about here. But just before we talk about the steps, I just want to again clarify that the new country is to bring for the masses, for the ordinary Joe out there, they will be drawn to this because it means their wealth is going to explode in this new country. And their health is going to dramatically improve because you're not going to have all of the crap in the FDA and all the bureaucracy. You will have regulatory bureaucracies, but they're not bureaucracies, they're regulatory companies. Let's make that clear. And they're going to be very effective and very good. So everything's going to be safe. We just know we came out of the whole COVID arena, and how safe is what happened there with us. I won't go into any further, but there's a lot there to examine. So as far as trusting, I'd rather trust a company than the government on any kind of regulations. But your health in this new country is going to explode because, again, you're not going to have the ruling class, the regulatory bureaucracies and the legislature and the stroke of the pen. You're not going to have all of this coming down, these policies, slowing down, suppressing the natural order of progress that's necessary in order to cure fatal diseases, including eventually aging itself. But just heart disease, cancer, Parkinson's, these things that are so debilitating and destroying people's lives, those will quickly be solved in this new country, where you have the geniuses of society. Like I said, it'll become the health mecca of the world. It'll be a brain drain. All your top scientists and doctors and businesses, honest businesses, will be rushing there to this new country to really do what they were born to do without being held back and having to wait 12 years for this and shutting this beautiful progress down because of that. It will be just the health mecca of the world. So you're going to have wealth. You're going to have health. This is just the average Joe and the average Jane. You're just going to have wealth and health, and you're going to have one other thing. You're going to have peace. You're not going to have crime. Take it away. Tell me why we're not going to have crime.
Well, the whole point of crime today, it seems it is the easy route. It is the path of least resistance. And in this new country where you have wealth and you have health and you don't have a ruling class to suppress you and keep you in a cookie cutter life, you're going to have almost infinite more opportunities to better yourself and to better your life for yourself and for your loved ones. And in the new country where you're not burdened, where you don't have a lid on society, the path of least resistance in that world would be honesty and effort through creating and producing values for others, as opposed to taking the easy route of crime. So crime becomes the hard path because you have so much to give up. You have so much to lose if you commit crime, because you're giving up this life of wealth and health and happiness for doing something that violates the prime law, which is doing initiatory force through crime. And if you do that, you forfeit your life of wealth and health.
Good points. And back in the 12 Visions Party days, there was a little slogan, and it was, become a millionaire without lifting a finger. And that's basically what happens in this new country, because the cost of living will be driven to fractions while values rise toward infinity. You will live better than millionaires today, even without lifting a finger, even without. So why would there be crime? If you're wealthy in this civilization, well, how do you become wealthy? Well, the cost of values is going to drop to fractions. We saw that, for example, with computer power. And as I said earlier, Fortune 500 companies had computer power. And now we stick in our pockets because that moved very quickly, particularly because the government, it took them a long time to get their claws on that technology. On that industry. So that will go. That phenomenon will go across the whole economic landscape in every single industry. That freedom to drive up value and drive down costs. So why would you commit crime? The whole incentive goes away. And as you pointed out, it flips it upside down on its head, where it's more difficult to commit a crime for the gains. And then the punishment would be severe in a country where the only law is no initiatory force. Can you imagine? So it will be the beautiful society. And that's our drawing card, wealth, health, and peace. I wrote a book years ago called Wealth, Health, and Peace on Earth. And it was introducing this whole concept. Now I've expanded that into the New World, my book, The New World.
And it's attainable.
Very attainable. And that's the drawing card, Wallace, for your average people out there, because they don't have the deep desire to save their consciousness and live forever because of the burden of life that's been unfairly put on their backs their entire lives and has robbed them of the life they were meant to have, the life when they were young and youthful that they felt and envisioned for themselves. Or if they couldn't envision it, they could feel it. But that feeling goes away. Eventually they give up. They resign to the cookie cutter life that society has put them under, the ruling class and so on. And that's always been the case. And they just don't see that they can step out of it into another system. They just don't see it. We are offering that other system, the new world, the new country. So now let's talk, now that I've got the masses' interest and the billionaires' interest, now let's talk about the steps to get there. Now, if tomorrow 10 of these billionaires call me and say, Mark, I'm down, let's do this. All right, we can skip a lot of this, right? Because we'd have the money and influence to make moves much quicker. But we know that's not going to happen. So with my level of my access to wealth and money and my influence out there, which is not a lot because for my entire life, I've run a secret society. So I've been hidden, so to speak, from the world. I'm just coming out now to the world. So we will start like this. We will start with something called the network state. And it's Balaji. What's his full name?
I don't know his last name.
Okay, well, everyone refers to him as Balaji, who wrote the book, The Network State, tongue twister. And we do plan to make a visit in September to his conference in Singapore regarding that. But the network state gives you the tools to get started. And essentially, actually, you've read up a little more on this than I have. Can you just give some founding ideas of what the network state is all about?
Yeah, pretty much citing his book, Balaji's book, The Network State. I like the analogy he gives where if you want to start a new company, you can do that. If you want a new company,
Yes.
you can do that. If you want to build on new land, you can do that. And pretty much if you want a new currency, you can do that. Pretty much everything up until this point has been you're able to start fresh and start anew. Almost everything in your life. And almost everything now is also going digital. Currency, digital. Companies, digital. Yet, what is not and what hasn't been that way is our countries. And it's much easier to create something new than to tear something down and build something on top of that. Just like Balaji explains in his book. If you wanted to build, a new building, it's just much easier to do it on a new plot of land than destroying one and building it on top of that. And so creating a new country, we're going to use his methodology at first to create a country digitally where we have citizens all across the world. And the network state is starting a country digitally. And then from there, we can manifest it into physical land and property. But the first step is to have a digital country.
That's right. So that's how we're going to start, and we're going to invite. Well, we'll show the world what we're talking about today. I have a very powerful funnel that we will be using to try to show just average people out there basically what we're talking about right here, to have them take a look at this Neothink network state. And then they can become part of that community. And as part of that community, they'll see what it's all about and how it's going to happen. And they'll have a community where people can talk and they can discuss and do crowdsourcing, and we can find ways to raise the money, the funds needed to eventually purchase this land once we get enough people and enough funds to go out and purchase land. And then from there, we would work toward establishing sovereignty. So it's a process. I put it in as my 10-year plan. 10 years go by very quickly. On the other hand, I'm 65 years old, so I'm putting pressure on myself to move on this and basically devote the rest of my life to this. And that is, I'm making this this statement right here today on this podcast. This is what I will be devoting the rest of my life to, starting this new country that's the other system that is not based on ruling classes and initiatory force, where the Constitution is the prime law, which banishes all initiatory force and allows everything to be a pure business system, a pure mutual value exchange. And the wealth, the health, the peace is going to be something the world has never experienced. The end goal is to cure fatal diseases, and particularly aging and death. I want to preserve the greatest value in the universe, and that is the human conscious mind.
Yes. And that's been your whole life's goal. I mean, you've been writing about this since the 80s and before that.
Published my first book in 1979.
Mm-hmm. And it's just really exciting now that we're really taking the next step into actualizing this and creating a society where everyone can live the extraordinary lives that they've always wanted, without being suppressed or trapped or burdened by those who benefit from the suppression of others.
And that's what's going to attract them. That's what will attract them into this world. And as the crowd grows, and as the community grows, they will start sharing what this has meant to them, and there'll be a crescendo of just pure joy and happiness as they, for the first time, hark back to the child of the past and that promise of youth and start living the life they were meant to live. And in the network state, there is so much in there to help individuals break free, even in today's civilization. You know, I have a neo-thinker in France who says, well, how is this going to work? Because we still have to pay taxes. And I said, yes, that's because we are still stuck. We're still stuck in the political civilization. And there's nothing we can do about that. But as we join the network state, we're going to develop strength and power and the possibility of to step outside of that system, that political system, into the new system. So we're working toward that. We won't be in that immediately once we step in the network state, but we will, hopefully 10 years from now, when we step on the land of our new country.
Well, that is an incredible feat, that something that this world has never known before. And it's something major. And I know that a lot of our members of NeoThink coin you as the champion of the average person. And because that's a lot of what you've been doing. You're taking ordinary people and trying to make them extraordinary. And so with this feat of creating an entirely new country in an entirely new political system is going to achieve that goal and mission of yours to help the average person transform their lives into extraordinary and exhilarating lives.
Yes, this actually works on two levels, and we've been talking about the whole civilization level today. But for the past 45 years, my works, my many books, work toward on another level, on the individual level, on helping people escape that cookie cutter routine rut that they dread. I help pull them out of that. And that's basically been the basis of my business for decades, is helping ordinary people. And I have the techniques and the tools to do that in my writings, and that will all come through the network state on an individual level as well. We're going to work at both the individual level for people and on the mass scale level by starting this new country and working really toward a prime law constitution, get rid of all these dastardly regulations that prevent energy, health, wealth, you name it. That's all going to go away, and we're going to have just a civilization no one's seen before on this planet. But it's very doable. It's time now for me to come out of the secret society, step out, be a leader, and make this happen.
All right, let's make this happen.
Deal.